Yeah, I'm gonna fucking join right now. No intro.
Thank you very much. Next we'll go. I'm very excited about this one. We never had him on the show before. Haas from Infrared. I just want to say I watched a stream of his last night where he systematically destroys the structure of empiricism. Okay, it's one to watch for sure. How are you doing, Haas?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. I'm Haas from the Infrared Show. We're a platform for Marxism, Leninism in the age of multipolarity in the post-COVID world.
Sounds good. I want to throw it to Haas.
Basically, my view on this issue of voter fraud. I don't know if there's widespread voter fraud in America. I haven't been convinced of anything. I'm sure it happened in the past, somewhere along America's history, but basically, I think this issue is a complete distraction and is a complete, basically, waste of time. The fact of the matter is, there is a fundamental division in America. Certain places, geographically, demographically, vote for different candidates. It's not an evenly distributed voter base in terms of partisan affiliation across geographic and demographic lines. And I think more attention should be paid to this division rather than nothing burger issues such as voter fraud and voter ID.
Actually kind of agree with the Leninist Marxists in the sense that this is bullshit.
I think there's always been at least some level of voter fraud to the level and extension of it, right? Always seems to come down to how much evidence you can find, right? So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of nuance about that particular conversation. But at this time, I'd like to point out, everybody, especially here in the Central Florida area, right? It's hurricane season. Make sure you get yourself a DC to AC inverter, right? That way you can plug it into your vehicle. You can have AC electric.
The first question I have is this really what convinced you that these parties that are in power, whoever's doing it, are corrupt and are committed to being in power at the expense or regardless of the people's will, and they'll do anything they can to stay in power? And second of all, the very reason why they're still in power, the very reason why nobody can challenge their authority is because they always whip up these bullshit partisan nothing burgers that divides people on one of the two sides, and people end up saying, well, I gotta go vote for the Democrats to stop those Republicans, or I gotta go vote for those Republicans to stop the Democrats. Nobody really thinks about, why don't we starve the machine and vote for third parties and actually not vote for either of these two parties, because that's actually going to be the only way that whatever corruption is going on, whatever it is, and I don't know the extent of it, can actually be challenged and actually be stopped. Because the thing is, even if you prevail in eliminating all voter fraud in America, guess what? These parties are still corrupt, and they're still going to do shady, dirty things that undermine American democracy. So that's my view.
Agreed.
Hey, wait. All right, Spark.
Agreed. But until you look at yourself in the mirror and say, who am I really voting for? Are they doing what we want as a whole, not just what you want on the right or what I want on the left? We're not going to get anywhere. And as far as Haas is concerned, I hope that he can get a chance to have his political ideology seen. Do I think it's going to win? Fuck no. But at least if he believes in it and he's an American and he believes it'll help America be a better country, that's what we're all supposed to want, right? Third parties, any party, I don't care. I just don't want to see this bullshit keep happening where we citizens are fighting each other over a corrupt government that's just going to tell us to fuck ourselves, which is what's happened this past election.
Thank you. I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but if we could steer away from personal attacks, that'd be just generally, just try to keep that in mind. Let's go to
somebody personally.
I mean the Frenchy thing. It was that, I don't know if it's necessarily being French isn't bad, but
it is bad.
Well, that is an opinion. It is.
We all love France. Let's go to have.
Not me. Can't stand French people.
Wow. I did not come very prepared on the issue of voter fraud, but then again, it's not very much of interest to me specifically, but I do think the divisions in America are very real divisions, and my goal is to focus on creating a united American politics so that people will stop fighting each other instead of focusing on the true enemy, which is corporate America and the 1%.
We will certainly see. Let's go to Haas.
I think that the question of whether this virus was man-made should be investigated. But I think both sides have not actually been paying attention to the more probable question that deserves more attention, which is, why is there an assumption that, given the fact that in July of 2019, there was a very bizarre shutdown at the U.S. Institute for the the Institute of Infectious Diseases, there was a rise of so-called e-cigarette vaping product use, lung injuries. There was an early flu season. And furthermore, in March of 2019, the virus was detected in the sewers of Barcelona in Spain. I just think that people aren't paying enough attention to Fort Detrick. Now, I agree with Dylan that the Wuhan, specifically the Wuhan lab leak, is being used for a new Cold War against China. That's why we see establishment media, Jon Stewart and all of these people peddling this theory. It's why Biden is starting to ease into peddling this theory. And I think it's a distraction from the fact that there's a high probability, or at least it's worth investigating, whether this virus originated from the U.S. military. I'm not really convinced that it originated in Wuhan. I think that it was just first discovered in Wuhan by Chinese scientists.
Cool. Thank you. Let's go to Redneck.
I find it hilarious that our Leninist actually has the research showing 2019.
It's called I forgot what it's called when you weaponize a virus, but China did this already with COVID. They did it with COVID-1. So it's not a stretch to say that they would do it.
Gain of function.
Wait, here's the question though. Who gains more from the coronavirus crisis? Is it China, which was already flourishing beforehand, or is it the American liberal deep state?
No, it's big corp. It's big corp.
That's what I think too. I think it's the American deep state and big corporations who had the most to gain from this virus, because they're the ones who feel that they need to change America and society as extremely as they do, whereas China has been flourishing and China didn't need this virus. China handled the virus in its own way.
Even if I agree that's the case, it doesn't mean that that's a reason, a motive, or that's...
No, I agree, but I just wonder, why are people not paying attention to what happened at Fort Detrick? Why has this not been investigated?
Fort Detrick, yeah.
Fort Detrick,
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, New Jersey.
Yeah, but it just seems like all you'd be doing is trading one corporate corporate/deep state, right, with giving that deep state complete authoritarian control in order to achieve a utopia that, quite frankly, is not achievable. And this is evidenced by China's their military actions against Taiwan. Every year they go out and
but this would be like
force against Taiwan.
Right, but this would be like if Florida
really wants to do is to be left alone.
We waged the Civil War when the South seceded. We waged the Civil War.
One at a time.
Taiwan has always been part of China, so this would be like if the South seceded from America.
No, it hasn't.
Taiwan is the only legitimate China.
For many centuries, it was part of China. It was the British, and it was colonial interventions, and then it was the Chinese.
It wasn't. It was a big political movement that happened inside of China.
This Chinese Civil War, you're right, but both sides agreed there's only one China, and Taiwan's a part of that China. They just disagreed about who rules that.
So then you wouldn't have a problem with Taiwan being the only legitimate recognized government of China then, right?
If they can win the support of the Chinese people, sure, but they haven't. The majority of the Chinese people are for the People's Republic of China government.
So your solution then to the people in Hong Kong would be what exactly?
The Chinese government is accommodating toward the political wishes of them to govern how they want, but they cannot secede and allow themselves to be a military base for foreign countries to be against China. If they want to have their political system and their policies, China doesn't care. As long as you don't try and secede and say that this is not part of the Chinese nation.
Thank you. That certainly sounds like politics.
I'm going to say it so sorry it didn't happen. I'm sorry. I'm done with the bullshit. So many
Yeah, but you already said that, so let's move on.
Without anything provided. So I'm done with this shit.
They have gain of function.
Hang on. Geek? What gives you the fucking moral authority to go? I'm fucking done with this. You guys are all you're crazy. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's
I'm
meet
asking
your
you
ground.
to
Let's
backing
go.
up your claims.
Hang on,
That's it.
hang on. I'm gonna ask you one question. Okay, fuck it all. It's natural. It's natural, Geek. It's natural. What the fuck can a government do to fix it when it happened? Tell me one thing that the government has
answer that
done that would
question?
prevent it from fucking spreading.
No, I go
No,
next.
I'm asking Geek.
I go
Ah,
next.
I'm
okay.
asking Geek.
All right, Dylan's next after that.
Geek.
Geek,
No,
if
come
Geek
on,
doesn't
Geek.
want to respond.
I just one question.
The same shit
He doesn't
that
want to
they would
respond. He
do
has
if
no
it was
fucking answer.
weaponized.
He has no fucking answer
I just answered.
because nobody has an answer.
Oh wait,
Holy
Geek.
All right,
fuck, you're
if I could just back up something. Sorry, your name is Redneck. If I could back up something you said, I think people miss this. This is an important point. So if you're saying trust the scientific consensus, let me ask you a question. There was a time about 100 years ago in which the scientific consensus in America was eugenics, scientific racism, all of that stuff, and there were people who rejected that despite what the scientists were saying. So I don't think scientists are gods, and you have to listen to whatever
Planned
they
Parenthood.
No.
and
Yeah,
you have to
eugenics,
listen
people.
and you have to listen to whatever they say without any criticism. I think people should be thinking critically,
If they
thinking
could-
independently.
If
Do not
science
do
gets
not
new-
blindly trust institutions. Second of all, this whole thing about how it could have been handled, I actually don't think it was Trump's fault. I think it was just America in general was. Even if we had a liberal president, we still would have seen all of the same problems. Maybe Trump made it worse. I can concede to that. But ultimately, America was not prepared for this virus. The nature of our society makes it so that we just cannot coordinate and organize at like the level of South Korea or these Asian countries or whatever, where we can just kind of have this social cohesion to be able to respond to viruses and have, harmonious lockdown. It's just, I think politicizing it was a little bit dumb in my view.
Why
Let me-
it's supposedly
I bet I
people
know
laugh.
that
No,
bitch.
Then bring him on. Then bring him on. Bring him on.
Spoken.
I bet I know that
spoken
bitch's
the entire
name.
fucking time. I'm not spoken on this entire fucking topic, so you can sit there and let me fucking finish. I made a fucking hat waiting. So here's
You
the
make a
thing.
hat.
Like, I feel like it's cuckoo banana pants in here. People talking about like conspiracies and this. Here's the thing. We talked about, it was proven that China released COVID-1. I believe you're referring to the one that happened in 2003, that over a 14-year investigation was proven false, that it was from nature. It wasn't from China releasing it like maliciously. So like we can just toss that out the fucking window. And second of all, like the notion that like, but there's this big conspiracy and like it's the corporate cabal. It is cuckoo banana pants. And like the fact that everyone here is like echo chambering, being like, yes, no, I too have done my research into this. It's like, have you done your research? Because like, and then the whole thing about science where it's like, science used to believe this, science used to believe this. Yeah, so here's the whole thing about the scientific method and how we approach it is that like science comes up with hypotheses that they then test and they look for correlations that then would provide some sort of path forward for how to treat things. And that's why we've been able to make the advances that we have, which is why scientific consensus, especially when it's based in peer-reviewed studied
Eugenics.
like that, there's a reason for that. Okay, listen,
Eugenics.
again, I'm not fucking finished. Thank
can I
you.
respond
Okay,
to
I
that?
can also
Okay.
scream fucking random.
Yeah, you're on the
words, okay?
list.
Let me fucking finish. Yeah, and so I don't know. It's just so fucking stupid. And you want to ask, well, how can we prevent deaths from COVID? Want to know what countries had the lowest death rate,
No,
the lowest
I asked
infection rate,
what
the
you could
lowest?
do.
No,
You
shut
guys
the fuck
burn
up.
it.
I'm not done. I'm not
Jesus.
done. I'm not done. Just focus on the road while I'm doing this, and then you don't have to listen to me
Answer the
ever
right
again.
fucking question
And then you
then,
don't have to listen.
Tim
Then you have to listen to me
All right.
ever
Let's
again.
let
okay?
Maddie wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay, listen. So, like, I want to talk about, okay, well, what would be a good approach to prevent deaths? There are so many examples of other countries that did a much better job than the United States of preventing infection and preventing spread, isolating the virus, and then preventing hospitalizations and deaths. Countries like New Zealand, like Australia, like Canada, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like Japan, like Vietnam. There's literally fucking examples.
You mean third world
we
countries
can
that use
sit here-
hydroxychloroquine and
No,
other drugs that
it-
we weren't
it
allowed
is-
to?
I didn't
Yeah,
realize
okay.
that South Korea, Japan, and Australia were third world countries, but that's so fascinating. I'll be sure to let them know in my next
I
fucking
said like
newsletter.
those other
So
third
again,
world
this is
countries
not a
too.
question
Yeah.
and answer session. This is not a question
Pick
and answer
one out
session.
of the
This
three.
is me weighing in. This is me fucking weighing in, my dude. So listen, like again, this is so fucking stupid. We might as well be debating the likelihood that our president is actually a lizard person coming in from the center of the earth to take over and sell the earth to Mars. So that's what I think, and this is so stupid, and I'm flabbergasted.
Okay,
Also,
thank you
I'm
very
good
much.
at art.
You still wear a mask? I
You-
bet you still
All right.
wear a mask, don't you?
We will go to Aircraft Sparky, who will hopefully respond to the Cuckoo Banana Pants argument, then to Dylan.
Well, what
By
about
the
me?
way-
Because I got to respond to that.
And then Haas after. Sorry, we're nearly out of time. Would everybody be cool just doing closing statements and putting your final thoughts in those?
Yeah, but I have
Are-
5 points that I'll put in my closing statement.
Okay. Cool. Well, we'll start with Haas.
Okay, first point. Calling something crazy is not an argument. Second of all, I don't think anyone's interested in the scientist chatter. They're not on the panel, so their opinion doesn't matter. Scientific institutions have never been uncritically accepted by the brilliant contributors and innovators in science. If they just accepted consensus, there would have never been any actual real progress in science. Don't act like the consensus model of scientific truth is God's spoken word, because you clearly know nothing about the philosophy of science. It's a very controversial viewpoint. It by no means is some kind of religious truth. Fourth, scientists don't have a monopoly on talking about the origins of COVID, because the motivations and operational capabilities of deep state actors, etc., is outside the realm of virology. Okay, so we're not even talking about viruses and the nature of viruses. We're talking about something that's outside of the scope of so-called scientific experts. And the notion that individuals can't criticize institutional narratives is actually extremely dangerous. It promotes institutional stagnation and allows those in power to have zero accountability in the name of hiding behind scientific experts. We just have to listen to the experts, right? Fifth, why were there so many mixed messages about masks and lockdowns in the beginning stages of the virus's outbreak by Fauci and those in power? They were demonizing China for wearing masks and having lockdowns, but suddenly America in an emergency situation had to adopt it themselves. So why should the American people trust these experts when the first thing they did was demonize China for the preventative measures China was doing? And oh, China's a dystopian, horrible, Orwellian state. That's what the people in power, the liberals, were saying who were against Trump. So I think both sides of the aisle, political aisle, deserve blame for how COVID was handled in America. And I think talking about New Zealand and Australia and wherever else is completely irrelevant, because those are different societies. And also they're islands, okay? But if that doesn't matter, they're completely different societies than American society. So politicizing it in the first place is a complete waste of time. That's my closing statement. That's all.
Science is a liar sometimes. It's a bitch, right? It's no different than the Always Sunny skit. It's the same argument. No one is arguing that, oh, scientists said it, therefore just accept it simply at that point. When I thought this was implied with it, that it also came with peer review. For example, Infrared brought up the fact of, well, what about eugenics? That was considered scientific consensus for a good period of time. That is true. But then, when the 1935 peer review panel by the Carnegie Institution and concluded that the Eugenic Research Office was basically doing nothing of merit, 4 years later, it lost all of its funding. After the peer review and the critical analysis from other great minds in science, that's when eugenics started to meet the wayside. Eugenics was proven to be an irreputable side of science that had no backing, and after peer review came out, after they analyzed the facts, that's when eugenics fell to the wayside. Infrared can doubt and laugh. I don't know, maybe Infrared is eugenics.
Well, I can't respond because
Who
it's
knows?
closing statements, so it is what it is.
Well, then why are you talking?
Do I have to be here? Are we done? Can I just leave?
what?
Yeah, I'll just leave.
Oh, you can act like a little bitch if you want, but it's closing statements.
Thanks for coming.
Well, yeah. I don't gotta listen to you guys, when I can't
Oh,
respond.
you're right. So you're just gonna just read from an article without posting the article.
all right,
and then
all right.
interrupt somebody
I will
else's
debate
Closing
for more
statement.
hours. I'm willing to debate more about it. So don't call me a fucking pussy. They want to end the fucking show. I'm willing to debate more.
You're the one interrupting during closing statements. You can.
Because he was fucking
I'm
addressing
muting
my
everybody,
facial
but I'm muting
expressions.
everyone
Oh, I can't make
except the
I
person
can't make
who's
facial
that's
expressions.
the point we're at. Sorry.
Anyway,
Please continue, Dylan.
eugenics was shown.
Bitch. Fucking bitch. I like the guy in the car.